NDP3, when you look at parish development model,
yes.
when you look at quite a number of documents that we are now, or policies that we are implementing as a country, the issue of mindset is coming out very vividly. It's outshining much of the other things, and I do not know how much effort we're putting into mindset itself. But let's just get to that. Why mindset change? Why are we now emphasizing national mindset change as a country?
True. The reason why we're emphasizing national mindset change is because government has rolled out several programs to transform the country, and the word is transforming the country. And like you have listed them in the NPA 3, blah, 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 all those are meant to transform this country into a modern state we all want to have. But we cannot do that one unless our mindset has changed completely.
Who is our now? Who is we? Whose mindset are we talking about in this case? When we talk about mindset change, whose mindset are we trying to change?
We're talking about we Ugandans. We Ugandans, but most critically, the young. Because the young are the ones with the fresh energy. The young are the ones to push the agenda ahead. No, the old people could be in the evening of their assignment, but more especially the young. How do we bring them on board with a complete mindset change that will now be part and parcel of the transformation
what
of the
What
country?
are we doing, Ndugu Oben, to effect mindset change? What are we doing as a country? Is it something that we just write about? Is it just a mantra? That we now talk about national mindset change. We keep talking about the things. You know, we need to realign our mindset. We need to have a positive attitude. We need to, but what are we doing if it's not just a mantra to us? What are we doing to effect mindset change in this country?
Well, first, we are doing skilling. Because in order to attain a complete mindset change, you must first skill, enlighten, and give somebody those basic skills that will be part and parcel of him or her changing the mindset change. Where we can talk about patriotism programs that are being undertaken, we're talking about, but the most critical part is the human resource, shaping of the human resource, skilling of the human resource. So that when we're talking about innovation, that let's go into innovation. Do these people really have the requisite innovative skills that will be part of their mindset change? But the most critical is one, the knowledge being offered by different institutions of learning, but also the keeping them safe. You have to, before you change someone's mindset, he or she must be healthy. And of course, government is not, is put a lot of energy into that one. That's why there are so many programs, even out of the formal schooling system, government finds it necessary that you must skill somebody. Not probably these heaps and heaps of theories that we get in schools, but how do we get skilled and how do we get be part of the innovation industry? And this program has begun, and the mindset is slowly changing. Let me give you the example. Have you seen several innovations that have taken, that institutions like Makerere University, for example, they are doing in terms of science? Have you seen the innovations done by university students in the ICT sector, in the medicine area? So it's not bad, but the rallying call now is, can we all have that complete mindset change, and we are part of the revolution to transform our society?
Is mindset change the same as patriotism and nationalism?
Well, it's a combination of both. But of course, you must have that patriotic feeling. If you have that patriotic feeling, that's why you lose your sleep to do something special for your country, do something special for yourself. You cannot be singing independence and whatever when probably you live in abject poverty. It doesn't make sense. And part of our people are still in that category because of mindset change. Not because they lack the energy to work and transform their lives, not because but because they are still lost in this thinking that for anything to come to improve their lifestyle, there must be some foreign hand or someone to come and say, please, let me do something for you to change. So it's about mindset, but the rest, I think, as a country and as a human resource, we have it all.
One of the things that is causing or affecting our mindset issues is the dependence syndrome.
True.
Ugandans have been taught to depend on some other persons for anything. If it's not to the foreigners, it has to be the government. If it's not the government, it has to be a politician. If it's not a politician, it has to be somebody in power somewhere. Everybody thinks that even fending for my family, I need to depend on Obed to actually do that to me. And that's where we are now. We normally play a very old video here of Uganda in 1962 when they were lowering the Union Jack and of course raising the flag of Uganda on that day, 9th October 1962. And you see the faces and the people who were there that time, 59 years ago. Now, fortunately, there are those who are still alive today because this is just 59. There were people who were there and were 30, they were 20, they were, you know, and they are in their 80s and possibly 90s. If we try to look back on that particular day when the people were jubilating, seeing the Union Jack coming down and the Uganda flag going up, in relation to what we have today, what would we be proud of as a country, apart from just saying, yes, we are a sovereign, independent state that decides its own things? Do we think, or do we feel we've walked the right way of independence, or there are quite a number of things that we've fallen short of as a country?
Well, let me begin with one thing, the last part of your question. We say, do we feel proud? Yes, we feel proud that we are part, or we take and we own our development agenda. We have our destiny in our hands. It's us who sit and deliberate. We could have our disagreements, we could do what, but it's us, the Ugandans, not some foreigner from 1,000 miles away. That you in charge, you sit, deliberate, and you say this is the path we need to take is very, very critical. But you hinted about our journey. Our journey has not been simple. It has not been orthodox. We have our first starts. We had our regrettable phases in our political history. But I think it's quite common even for a kid to perfect the art of walking. He or she must fall down several times, get wounded, get injured. But through the falling that this kid will now know how to perfect the walking style and stuff like that one. We had that phase, and I wouldn't want to blame ourselves big time. Remember, we adopted something that was quite alien to us. How many of us were educated to be able to keep safe these amalgamated nations that constituted the entity called Uganda? How many? I remember the oldest person then was Dr. Bote, who was he 39? Most of his cabinet then were boys and women of 25, just fresh from university. So experience, age prayed against them how to keep the fragile nations of Uganda that had been merged with former entity called Uganda. And of course, mistakes were made. There's no doubt about it. That, you know, the 1966 crisis, it results into a coup d'etat, then phases of civil war. But mid-80s, I know some people don't want to listen to that one. A new movement comes in and redirected our political and economic path. It's not been simple, but we are now beginning to see quite many things that make us proud. If you see this massive development program that are being undertaken, and when you see no guns, no bullets flying in every corner of Uganda, then for quite some time, I think the last form of civil war was in 2006. And that since then we have been a peaceful country trying to enhance our development agenda at quite reasonable speed. Then you say, yes, we should celebrate. And you just can see that the best is yet to come. No doubt about it.
What are the benchmarks of our successes now, with independence as it is?
Like I said, the success is that we are now a very peaceful country, and even contributing to the peace of some other countries in the region. But the most critical is that we are shaping our economy, moving into a modern state. when you see the massive investments that we are putting, part which is our taxes, part which is some loans that we do acquire, and no country does not acquire loans anyway. When you see the massive road infrastructure, when you see the massive investment in the energy sector, I've just heard people saying there's too much energy, there's too much power, why? No, it's because we don't want to make mistakes we made in around 2000 when the country went into blackout, when we could not meet the demands of the industries. Quite many industries are coming up in Uganda, and they must have electricity. And you can't make a mistake. We need this power to power the industrial agenda. Okay. The investments in agriculture, investments in human resource, education. So there is clear path to where we are going.
When you and I were growing, Independence Day was another Christmas, it was another Easter, it was another Eid, it was another one of those other public holidays that we could take days off, we could take off from the gardens, do all the things and be part of the celebrations and feel that it is really uhuru for us. As time goes by, we'll have lots of excuses to give, but you also notice that now independence is celebrated by a few people who possibly still care, a few who still are out there as nationalists, and they will tell you it's a thing of government. For those who are in government, who work with government, who are in government departments, are the ones who know it. What needs to be done that when we celebrate Uhuru like we are here today, that on a day like Saturday, let alone it being a weekend, but it would be a day where everybody would say, let me do something to actually show I'm part of independence, whether I don in the Ugandan flag, whether I put on Ugandan colors, whether I do this or that, to just celebrate that. I do not mind if I'm not in Kololo, if I'm not anywhere where the celebrations are happening. What needs to be done that independence still becomes our Christmas, our Eid, our other celebrations that we have?
Well, it depends on how some people choose to form a certain narrative or even to celebrate. There are those who can make it big team, depending on their mindset. I remember sometime there was a leader in a neighboring country who even stopped national celebrations and even said money have to celebrate independence should be put in as you remember? I don't want to go. So it's about how a certain class of people choose to look at it. But yes, when we had just gotten independence, there was a nostalgic feeling about it. Probably in the 70s, people who still had that cruel feeling of the colonialists. But as we grow and grow and grow, probably me and you are not part of that exploitation. We just read about it in books. But the biggest thing is that we celebrate and remember for remembrance purposes. Let's remind our generation that this day means this because of 1, 2, 3 things. COVID time, the celebration, of course, is different. It is scientific, like we chose to call it, and therefore we don't need to rally people to have several events before proceeding and then gather in numbers and dance and celebrate, because that's not how it will be, and that's how it has been for the last 2 years. Most celebrations are scientific, a few. There'll just be 600 people, invited guests in Kororo, and apart from the parade, the rest will only be 600 people. Before, it was fun, before COVID, and it was rotating across the country. Cabinet had decided that, look, these celebrations must be part of the people. They shouldn't be a Kororo exclusive for the elite, for you and me. So we would go in different places, and I can tell you people would come in numbers and they would enjoy. But we can't do it right now because of limitations of COVID-19. Will be few, but the basic thing and the bottom line is that what is the essence of that event. Forget about how people drink and sleep and do what, but that day, to keep in our memory and what it means to Uganda. To keep reminding ourselves about that chapter. You know, most mistakes some young generations make is because they don't endeavor to educate themselves about their history, or they just brush it aside. But it is critical that we keep reminding ourselves that at some point we were like this one, at some point we got instruments to determine our future, and this is how far we've gone. These are the conversations we've been talking about, mistakes, some things that are not yet complete. It's a good reminder when we're celebrating such a day.
That's very important. Now, when you look at the majority of Ugandans, you talk about those that need to realign their mindsets and all these things. Now, to the unemployed youth in Uganda, to the jobless, of course, to the vulnerable people, just recently, when we had, of course, a second lockdown here, people going home and didn't have anything to eat. And we also categorized some new category of the vulnerables who needed some money. And we saw people, everybody at that time, because there was 100,000 shillings to be given by government, everybody eventually became vulnerable. Looking at all those people, the vulnerable, the jobless, there's so many who have gone to universities, they've gone through education. We'll talk about all these. We'll say at Independence we had one university, today we talk about 50 universities. At that time we had only so many graduates, at this time we have these graduates every other year. But they're all here, they do not have jobs and anything. And when you talk about independence, there's questions. What is in this thing for us? If I even went to school, I have a bachelor's degree, I have no job. I've gone to school, I've had education, I have no employment, and there is not enough employment for everybody. How would they feel, or what should they feel like celebrating independence 15 years later? They've gone to school, but they can't even find anything.
Well, quite challenging assignment. It's not Uganda's challenge alone. It's a global challenge. Finding jobs for all the educated and to be part of the productive force. It's a global challenge. And of course, like I said, when we are reflecting on such, when we are celebrating such, and such questions come, it put us, all of us, including you and others who are in employment or who are in leadership, to think, and especially government, how do we do it? You've realized that the president for the last how many years, part of his speech these days is incentivizing, especially the educated who have no jobs. When you see money through Myoga, now there is parish models, there is women fund, youth livelihood fund. All of these are programs deliberately put in place for such category of people to be part to change their lifestyle. Not someone going to school and then he or she is agonizing and regretting why probably they went to school. Programs are being made. It would be really irony if we are celebrating and we don't have, as a government, deliberate programs to have our youth find jobs, to have our youth find something to do. This investment craze running around the globe, attracting investors to come to Uganda, is because we want jobs for our uneducated. The push for government to release money to several vulnerable groups, I've just mentioned them, is a deliberate agenda to have our educated but who are not employed to employ themselves, not formally getting employed, but to employ themselves and earn a living. So it would be a fallacy if we're not having deliberate programs. But personally, I'm proud that there are deliberate programs. We can debate about some few things that are not being perfected, but there is a deliberate program, and that's the bottom line. So as we go ahead, we put our leaders to task to fine-tune though whatever loopholes that could be there, but there are deliberate programs to cure that one. Okay.
Well, Obed, hold it here. We have a skit, a very small documentary here called the Commander-in-Chief Files that comes every day in our program of Good Morning Uganda Extra. And we'll just take a break. And when we return, of course, we shall also have seen that very short clip reminding us of our journey. You just talked about the youth learning and knowing their history. And today we'll also have one of our former presidents, Dr. Apollo Milton Obote. Now, this was Obote too, also delivering a budget speech in Parliament. We'll return and continue with the conversation. Stay tuned.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
Welcome to Commander-in-Chief Files, and in this episode of CNC Files, we bring you what the President of the Republic of Uganda, His Excellency Dr. Apollo Milton Obote, said when he presented his budget speech to the Right Honourable Speaker, Cabinet, and to Ugandans who were listening in on Radio Uganda. The President emphasized the tremendous reduction in sugar, soap, and beer prices as compared to the nagging times just after the 79 war.
Mr. Speaker, examining the first 2 quarters of the fiscal year 1981-82, prices have been fluctuating to reflect demand and supply conditions. After considerable rises between April and June 1981, the prices of most commodities have tended to fall significantly below the pre-flood June 1981 levels. Due to the regularity in supply, sugar has performed best in the lot, declining by 50% of the pre-flood June level. The actual prices for imported sugar now vary between 150 shillings and 180 shillings per kilogram, compared to an average of 442 shillings in June 1981. The price of other basic commodities such as soap and salt also declined significantly, ranging between 15 to 37% over the 6-month period, that is July to December 1981. Beer prices declined steadily over the 2 quarters, with a current average of between 250 shillings and 300 shillings per half-liter bottle, depending on the brand and depending on where one buys it from.
The annual budget statement is an official statement by government that depicts the country's income and expenditure over a period of 1 year. It can also highlight tax cuts, increments, and the status of a budget, whether surplus or deficit. Uganda's gross domestic product, GDP, by then was $2.24 billion. Today, Uganda boasts of a GDP of $37.4 billion.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
Well, thank you so much. We come back from that short break of CIC Files. Ndugu Obed, I just don't want to ask you why you were in 1983, and don't ask me why I was in 1983. Those were here, they were here. But here's where we are now. That was 1983, of course, so many years later, and here is where we are today. And Ugandans, of course, will say, even up to this time, we still struggle or grapple with these budget issues. We talk about a growing economy, we still borrowing, we still can't raise, we can't fund ourselves 100%. What needs to be done?
Well, the bottom line is, like I said in my earlier submission, that there is no country under the world that does not borrow. When I was driving here, I was listening to BBC, and the contentious issue in the American Congress is the debate between the Democrats and Republicans. How issues because USA is going beyond the threshold in a matter of weeks' time. So that's the most contentious thing. So that's why I'm saying there is no country, even the number one economy in the world, still borrows. So, but the most fundamental thing is you borrow to do what? So if you're borrowing to invest in productive sectors of the economy, you're not going wrong. The clip has just said we are now an economy of 37 billion, but no, in fact it's 40 billion. 40 billion, you do not grow it when you are still with using subsistence methods of production. You must invest in strategic areas. And that's what we are doing. We've borrowed the biggest, that what made our borrowing almost reach close to, so now 40 something, close to 50, was largely for the biggest investment projects we have undertaken as a country. The hydropower projects, some road infrastructure, but you must power this country. You must power the industrialization agenda of this country. You must you must also invest in innovation, and innovation, you have to have power, you have to have ICT. So we borrowed on that one. But in fact, we need to remind ourselves that even where they factor in, where we are saying we are 40, I'm forgetting, is it 49 around, thereabout, are those strong projects that will change the course of our economy. Remember, we have to invest, put some substantial investment in the oil sector. That oil must come out. But we all know what once this oil comes out in the next 4 to 5 years, those are the estimates. At least economists tell us that we will be having $8 billion money injected in our economy every financial year. So, do you want to assume what $8 billion will do to our country if it is injected on an annual basis for the how many years we shall be extracting this oil? Of course, it will change the shape of our country, of our economy, and repayment won't be an issue. So, basically, are we paying? We are paying in time.
Okay, that's very important. Now, let's talk about infrastructure development vis-a-vis social development. And I think that this is where we've also had contentions or arguments or debates politically. You notice that, yes, we have really tried to borrow money in this country, and we've tried to do very hard, big infrastructure developments in this country. True. But when you look at them, because Uganda is one country, I think in Africa, it's one of the countries in Africa where you can drive border to border, and you're driving on road. You drive from here across to Kenya, go to Rwanda, go to Sudan, go to Congo, go to everywhere. You can't do that. We've built, we have the hydro dams that we have across the country, and quite a number of those. But still, you notice that even with that very good infrastructure development, we are still failing to realize or to get to a middle-income status. We are doing all these things. What is not happening? Why aren't we doing the balance that the social development is not really given that due regard that we pampering and we are pushing ahead infrastructure at the detriment of social development? What needs to be done to have that balance for somebody to actually appreciate and say, yes, we have a road, but socially we're also making ends meet?
Well, you're right, but Jagenda, you must also realize that you must do one thing at a time. You need to first say, okay, let me commit these 5 years to infrastructure development, which of course we know the benefits we'll get out of that one. We've seen how we are leading exporter of most things, especially agricultural products and some other in the region. All that is because of the road network you've talked about. But at the same time, I want to say we've not forgotten the social sector. If you've seen in the last how many years, you've seen government embarking extensively on rehabilitating all health centers across the country, expanding them and equipping them. For the last 2 years, there's been a deliberate heavy investment in the health sector. Similarly, there has been also deliberate investment in education. When you talk about UPE, UCE, and funding specific skills, vocational colleges across the country, there is also the resumption of strong investment in the social services. When I talked about the heavy investments, deliberate now, when a lot of money is being committed to EMIOGA, parish models, operation wealth creation, youth livelihood, women, again, that's also the social sector. You cannot have physical infrastructure when the human infrastructure is still primordial. So there has been now for the last like 2-3 years, there is heavy investment in the human resource to realign it to the other development agenda of the country. It's not been neglected. It's only that we had to first begin with the infrastructure development, which was highly capital intensive, but the social sector is quietly being looked at, and is all pointing to a positive direction.
One of the other things that we're also fighting with and grappling with as a country, which seems to be undermining our democracies or our independence, the 59 years that we've had, is corruption. And everybody will talk about this. Just go on the street and answer people, what do you think about independence? And they'll say, what independence are you talking about when we have corruption, we have all these public funds swindled and nicked from us, stolen from us, you know, to benefit a few people. And this is what people think. Obed and Semakola steal money from this country, then they go and invest in another country, they go and build in another country, they go and keep the money in another country. What needs to be done in as far as corruption is concerned, because we've talked about corruption, and even if you get back into our post-independence history from where we began, in 1962, coming all along, we've had these problems of corruption. We've had problems of corruption. We can't say that corruption has just become a thing of today. But what needs to be done to actually ensure that we find a mechanism, a way of actually fighting corruption, that all this money that is stolen from us through corruption tendencies can actually be used to do this, and without this corruption we would possibly have had this country?
Well, that's true, and the political leadership has appreciated that challenge. And the funny part is that corruption is as old as humanity. You'd be daydreaming to say you can erase it and you have a very clean society. Even countries like China that have designed a very strong punitive measures, because for them it's at times death. Still you hear stories of massive corruption taking place. But the most underlying thing in all this is government commitment to try and close the gaps where hemorrhage of financial resources are being abused. The beauty of it is that there is no impunity. These agencies that have come up, the anti-corruption, the IGG, police, the anti-corruption court, you've seen people being convicted. I don't want to go into names, but there are people you see and you're like, oh, I wish he or she didn't go for this one. See old people. You've seen people dying in prison because of being convicted of corruption. All of those point to, in my view, good direction. Because, you know, there is a price to pay. Much as you can be tempted to risk, but you know, you made risk your whole life. So for as long as mechanisms are being put in place, both even in terms of equipping the institutions that are supposed to fight corruption, forensic auditing, forensic investigation, I see police trying to acquire more skills and whatever. That should give us hope. But like you're saying, we need to push more further in this direction. And of course, that's where you and me come in our profession as a journalist. We need to push and expose this vice, because it's not a vice we should give room, because we know countries that really have gone down just because of corruption. There's some countries where corrupt gangs even dominate every sector of the economy. That's why we wouldn't want to go. So it's a combined effort. Unfortunately, it calls for us all. Not only those who are in positions of leadership, citizens across the board, cultural leaders, religious leaders, but we're not that bad.
Okay. Well, thank you. Just before we end this, Obe, now to Independence on Saturday. It is Saturday,
Saturday.
At Kololo. It's going to be virtual, of course. UBC TV here will be covering it, which is very positive. And any visiting heads of states that are coming for this particular one?
Not at all, and I think...
The last one we had in 2019, we had the President Emerson Mnangagwa.
Yes, but...
in Soronko.
In Sorongo. No head of state will come. I think we still feel it should remain scientific as of now. Of course, when it involves heads of state coming, the number keeps growing of those that will be required to be at Kororo. Right now, we deliberately decided not to invite delegations from outside country. They call a lot for, you have to test them. Certain people don't even want to be subjected to that kind of testing. They have their way of how they are doing their things. So they may not be happy with your Ugandan strict demands, demands for COVID tests and stuff like that. And then we chose no, for now,
we'll do it.
Let's do it the Ugandan way.
By ourselves.
By ourselves,
okay.
Until the situation becomes better.
And you said it's only 600 people?
Only 600 people.
Have they tested for COVID?
They were all tested.
They were all tested.
They were all tested, and we don't even have delegations from up country.
Okay.
Because still, when you have delegations from a country, there is a strain on the testing, doing what. So we want very few people, very few representatives. Even all members of parliament will not be invited. There will be few heads of committees, commission members, cabinet ministers, of course, ambassadors and other diplomats, and of course the guest of honor will be His Excellency President Yoweri Museveni.
And any fanfare now that people will not be there, just look at the 600 because this could be the cream de la cream. Will there be some fanfare, so some little entertainment for themselves, something to just because the independence that we are
fanfare, no, as in the word of fanfare, because still
because of the situation.
Because of the situation, but we promise we shall have a colorful parade. The parade are not part of the 600 people. Okay. No, the normal parade will be there. They've all been tested. They are being exclusively kept somewhere, not interact with people. So we shall have our normal colorful parade. Okay. We shall have forms of entertainment, not the other many cultural groups that will be will represent the whole Ugandan cultures and stuff like that, because that is also what. But we shall have entertainment. We have professional entertainers, entertaining group that will entertain Ugandans across the day for as long as we'll be in Kororo. Okay, it will be colorful for TVs and to our viewers, no doubt about it.
Very finally, what do you want the people to take from you, and as far as our 59th independence is concerned, and here as we get out of studios?
Yes, as we get out of studios, let's go back to what you highlighted as the catchword in our sim. Mindset change. If you don't change your mindset, it is to our detriment. If you don't change your mindset, we shall remain lamenting, and against our detriment. Let's rally the president's call, because he's part and passionate about transforming this country. So if you change our mindset, the way we do things, the way we approach challenges will be there. That's how our friends in the tiger nations of the Far East,
the Asian tigers,
the Asian tigers were able to make a paradigm shift in their lifestyles, in their economies. They had a mindset change. They believed in themselves and they said, yes, we can. They worked 24 hours. And we can see, we can pick from them and also change our country for the better. Okay.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Mr. Obed Katrebe from the Uganda Media Center, and also a part of the National Organizing Committee of the 59th Independence Celebrations. Our celebrations will be on this Saturday at the Independence Grounds in Kololo. Just like you said, it's not going to be the traditional. It's not going to be like it was in 2019. I remember 2019 in Sorongo. Yes, exactly. It won't be that. It's just a very small one, virtual at that. UBC TV will be covering that. All our platforms, Star TV, and of course all the so many radio stations across the country will also bring this live to you on Saturday. We'll stop it here for today. My name is Yaganda Semakola Ziksoka, but just like I said, mindset is very important, and we shouldn't think we are actually doing this for anybody. Change your mind, not for Obed, not for Jagenda, not for the government, not for your member of parliament, but for your own good sake. For God and my country, stay blessed, and remember that COVID is still with us. So let's see what we can do to protect ourselves and to protect our dear ones as we also fight COVID out of this country of Uganda. Good morning.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.